Gathering has always been a defining mark of the church. The Bible calls followers of Jesus to regularly down tools and come together to pray, to worship God, to open up the Bible, to break bread and enjoy community with God's family. And it is such a privilege to be able to gather together to worship the risen King Jesus and to encourage one another in faith and in life. And if I'm being honest, it's the thing that I've missed most over the last 6 months. Of course, there's been a lot of talk more recently about how, if and when churches should and can regather. But I'm not hearing very much talk about what our gatherings are to look like once we do, other than that we can't sing. Should we be heading back into the same rhythms and routines we had before? Should our gatherings look different? Should we carry fresh expectations? What was the point of not being able to gather for 6 months, therefore, from heaven's perspective? A few weeks ago, I heard this great line. When the soil of your life, your church, your city has been turned upside down, there is a window of opportunity to plant seeds. And that really was the situation for the early church that they found themselves in, as their lives and their community was turned upside down by the gospel. And their response was bold expectancy as the people of God gathered to one another and to glorify God. And I imagine that the question on everyone's lips as they met was simply, what's going to happen today? You see, there was a dynamic present that caused Jesus' gathered body to be motivated and mobilized on mission. Ordinary, everyday people heading into the world to serve and change the fabric of the communities wherever they were scattered. The church could not be ignored. But let's be honest, in contrast to that, our meetings are so often safe and predictable, which, dare I say it, is also known as boring. Increasingly over the last few years, I've been living with a sense that the church is in danger of having settled for meetings rather than for Jesus' mission. We're meeting for the sake of meeting, rather than meeting to fuel us to get up and go in the way that defined that early church we read of in the Bible. The vast amount of our time and energy, particularly that of leaders, is focused on just one morning of the week with little capacity for anything else, even if we desire it. And if our focus is on the wrong thing, then there's little need for us and a low desire within us for the dynamic power Jesus equipped his church with. And as a result, our gatherings and therefore the church is missing that same power and focus we see in the early church. A power that propelled the gospel forward so forcefully into their communities that it couldn't help but flow out into new communities and regions beyond. God's people gathering together is a unique, precious, and amazing thing. But if our gatherings cause us to be busy with the wrong stuff, and if they don't fuel each one of us into mission, then really they do need disrupting. And honestly, I think that this is heaven's purpose for this strange hiatus we've experienced. In this new era, meetings are not enough. As a church, we live with a vision to see Swindon come to life in God, but putting it simply, we're in danger of having fallen asleep on the job. So God is disrupting his church. He's calling us to wake up and refocus ourselves on his mission. It's therefore time for us to stop coming and telling God to do what he's instructed and equipped us to do. It's time to stop seeing our part in the mission of God simply being a recruitment drive to get people to go to church. It's time to step up and mobilize ourselves as a church community from meetings to mission. And so we need to see this moment that we're in not as a frustration, but as an opportunity for us to refocus and plant new seeds. See, this is not a call for us to shift away from gathering, far from it. But it is a call to us to see that our scattering and our mission is equally as important as our gatherings. And that our gatherings are to be shaped in such a way that we are all mobilized into mission. I'm very aware, though, that old habits die hard. Retooling doesn't happen just because we want it to. A new culture isn't established simply by waiting and seeing what happens. This has to be a work of God within us. And Jesus told us that he was a gardener who prunes the vine to make it fruitful. The reality is that bearing fruit is painful and it's a costly process, but it is one which is essential. And I believe that this pruning process that's taking place is removing our old patterns, our old system and activity is being stripped away from us in order that in the days ahead we bear fruit. If we adopt the approach of simply watching and waiting, we won't allow God to come and cut away from us anything that is dead and doesn't give life. And we'll miss the call of God in this moment on us to refocus and shift our priorities. And the reality is we'll end up looking no different than we did before. It takes something extraordinary to shake things up, to make us question if our focus is on the right thing. But it takes a decision of the will to move on, to respond to God and to exercise faith. Gateway, we need to make radical decisions, both personally and as a church family, that challenge us to respond and create opportunities for us to make the shift from the old era into the new era. And really that is what I believe God is doing in this moment in his church. He's disrupting our ordinary so that we might refocus ourselves, so that we are mobilized with fresh dependence on God, on prayer, and the power of God that propels us into the mission of God. Gatherings have never meant to be times when a few do whilst most watch on, but they are to be spaces to contribute and grow, to share exploits of faith and inspire one another into mission. And so we need to come before him and cry out to God to bring his life and his power to us with a renewed zeal, that we might refocus from meetings for the sake of meetings to meetings for the sake of mobilizing us into mission. A number of years ago, as a church, we received a prophetic word, which I really do believe God is bringing to life in us at this moment. It said this: I feel God wants to increase the imagine this level of this church. There is favor for you guys to imagine. I feel that this church is going to be marked by social enterprises and projects and lots of small things. Some things will only exist for one day and some things will be as big as a food bank. And I feel that God is saying that this is all going to come out of the presence of God. The presence of God is the priority for you. The presence of God, the presence of God, the presence of God. That you are to pursue the presence of God in your workplace and in worship and in going for that, and then grabbing vision out of heaven. Using your imagination, you will see at least 50 to 100 enterprises or activities, social things that will change Swindon. Gateway, can I call us in these coming days to exercise the gift of faith in this moment, to ask God to help us plant new seeds, that we imagine what it looks like to be a church renewed and refocused in mission in the days ahead. And then let's give ourselves to that together with bold expectation.